episode of Instagram Live from the Lightbridge. My name is Jakob Ballinger. I'm the founder of the Lightbridge and a Gaffer. And today we're going to talk about Van Gogh and how we can learn from his way to do lighting all the way to how we can apply it to our films on set. Thanks everybody for joining. I hope this is an interesting one. I spent a long time doing research on this, so it's a good thing. So the main message I'm trying to bring across today is a really simple one. It's the simpler your lighting setup is, the more emotional impact it's going to have. Now I know what you're going to say, Jacob, well, I see all these huge, beautiful sets and all the setups. That doesn't look simple and it looks awesome. Well, the truth is that even the bigger the setups they get, it's a really simple and clear idea that just gets amplified to a bigger scale, no matter what your location is. So it always comes down to understanding the core of what you're actually trying to do, the emotion you're trying to bring up, I guess, in your audience, and how you can use the tool to achieve this. So today we're going to look at this in a really precise way. And I've been obsessed with painters for a long time to get inspiration, not because we look at the Renaissance painters and we think, wow, the lighting looked really great, because the truth is they were trying to solve a really simple problem. They wanted to achieve an emotion. It's actually exactly what we want to do, right? So we're going to look into this today to see what we can do. I do want to point out that I'm doing this via the monitor. Sadly, I cannot use Instagram Live anymore to present pictures to you. But if you go to the link in our bio, you'll find a link to the Google slide presentation. You can look at it in big, in full quality. Okay, everyone. And if there are any questions come up along the way, of course, let's move ahead and we'll go on. So if we put this into perspective, if you look behind here, we can see over here on the left, here we see stone paintings, right? The most simplest, the most amazing thing when they started actually to use light to do paintings, right? Because they had the fires, and the fires started to make those animals dance on the walls. It was an amazing way, actually, the way painting started. And that was like 15,000 years before Christ, right? And then we have here 1200, the Byzantine arts. That was the time when people were actually saying, well, how can we use light? We need to show these really holy people and have a huge impression. So what they did is they called it sending light. They tried to create a light that emanates from a person to the outside to create this beautiful feeling of, wow, you're looking a person in the face. That's what we try to do with lighting as well, right? It's not only try to create moods, it's also saying, I want to see the person's face. So we can learn a lot from these amazing icons of the time. And of course, then we have the Renaissance, and Da Vinci came along, and we developed perspective. That's when Rembrandt came along. And then around 1827, photography was invented. And that's actually something we should look into a little bit, exactly that period when painting and a lot of portrait paintings were happening at the time, and they jumped to making photos, because I think that's exactly what we're seeing right now too. We have the way we do things, and all of a sudden AI comes along. So it's going to take away our jobs. Littler cameras with more, with more sensitivity. We need less lights. Is that going to take away the jobs of the electricians? So I think we can learn a lot from when we look at paintings and how people did that at the time. So paintings, right? People were using portrait paintings. That's the way they got pictures in their houses, right, of themselves, because there was not photography around. But when photography came around, this whole industry of people that were painting portraits suddenly got lost. You can see over here, similar things all of a sudden in 1-2 minutes, how long they ever had to expose to get that image, but much faster in the days that people had to stand to have their portraits painted. So there was a lot of fear going on around the time, because it just was faster taking a picture than painting a picture, right? And that was actually the time of Industrial Revolution. If we look at this in more detail, and I do love that quote, I'm quoting it a lot these days from Einstein, when he says, to really become great, you have to look longer at the problem and not at the solution. And I think we jump far too fast to think, what's the solution? But we're not actually really analyzing the problem. So let's go into this to understand what was going on at the time, for us to learn how we can use it in our industry that is changing and evolving all the days too. So again, Industrial Revolution, the time when photography came along, a lot of people moved into the city, right? Because that's where the jobs were. And they were living in horrible working conditions. I mean, a lot of people living in these households, right, together in cramped spaces. And they were saying, well, we don't need black and white pictures of ourselves. Our faces are up close all the time anyway. We're yawning for nature. We want to see colorful images. So the painter said, oh my God, right? So it's these paintings over here. So the painter said, finally, We're not going to lose our job. We're just not going to paint portraits anymore. We're just going to go outside and paint landscapes and beautiful colored landscapes so it can come along. But I know what you're thinking. That's not going to last long. Color photography is going to come along and painting's going to be doomed and gone once again, right? But the truth is something different happened. Something really amazing. And I think this is the crucial point for all of us today, lighting sets and working in the industry that we're working in, to see what we can change. Because what those amazing artists at the time did, they didn't say, let's invent a new tool and then suddenly we'll be better than photography. They said, no, let's take the biggest and the best tool that exists and use it. And right, the biggest and best tool this human has is our creativity, our imagination. It's exactly what they did. And when Cézanne then said all of a sudden, well, if I don't need to paint exact paintings anymore because photography can do it, I don't care. I'll move on. I'll paint an impression of what I think. I'll try to get an emotion going to what I have, what I want to see. I don't want to be like a photo that says, this is it, this is what we have. Cézanne said, no, we can take this one step further than this. And obviously from there was a landslide. Expressionism came along, more vivid colors. And look at this. All of a sudden, the industry said, oh, we can invent a tool to do vivid colors. And that's when the chemical synthesis came along. So then painters all of a sudden got the chance to get cobalt blue, aquamarine colors, all these beautiful, crispy, beautiful colors we know. So again, it's not about the industry giving something to us. Here's a new tool, use it, it's going to be amazing. It's about what we want to create and what tools are available for us to create this. So it's upon us to innovate the industry like this, to achieve the same thing that the painters did to stay along. So that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today with Van Gogh. And for everybody joining now, I do want to point out again, if you want to see the slideshow presentation in better quality, the Google slide link is actually in the Instagram handle on the top. So if you look at that, we have already, I talked about this a little bit briefly in the Renaissance. We came upon the time when humans finally found out how they could paint perspectives. So what happened was suddenly they could use light differently. It wasn't about, as I mentioned earlier, with the icons, it was sending light, it was light coming out from the person. It was about saying, no, let's light come into a room, let people be in that room. And I think that's exactly where cinema started to become really interested in Renaissance paintings, because that's exactly what we do. We light rooms, right? And from there, Impressionism came along, and that's exactly the time where Van Gogh came around too. That's what we're going to have a look at. We're going to jump a little bit into Hammershøi too, because we can learn a lot from him, from lighting. So Amsterdam, right? That's a place where the beautiful Van Gogh Museum is, and even Lou Reed mentioned in one of his amazing songs, maybe I should go and live in Amsterdam, in a side street, in a canal, spend my evenings in the Van Gogh Museum. What a dream, Van Gogh Museum. So Lou Reed, if you don't listen to him, amazing person to listen to. A lot to learn from too. So that's a museum in Amsterdam. But what was interesting was, actually it was my aunt that brought me to it when she came to Amsterdam to visit. Jakob, do you want to hop on? There's a museum outside of Amsterdam actually that has really interesting pictures of Van Gogh. And that's what we're going to look at today. And to quickly touch into Van Gogh, this is an amazing thing. This guy only painted for 10 years of his life. A pure genius, right? So he started when he was 27 and he died when he was 37. So that was the only time in his period where he had to learn everything he could to become just a master at what he was, right? So if you think about that, he created in those 10 years 900 paintings. I mean, that's almost a painting every 36 hours. So that guy was just plowing through it, learning as fast as he could. And I was so impressed going to this museum that the way he started to understand light, to use it for him, the exercises he did, I think are amazing exercises that we can use too, to be inspired, to see how we can use light. And just a paradigm shift, I hope it's in English. When you look a little bit from the side at the same problem and suddenly you got a better view at it. So let's jump right in. So this is a cool, right? So I saw this in the museum. You see this is wool put together with different colors. I'll go a little bit to the side for you to see it. So actually Van Gogh did this to put colors together, to see which color combinations did he like, and he kept them in his box. Isn't that an amazing idea, to have colors you can hold in your hands, to say, this color feels right to me, this color combination feels right to me? I'm thinking about how that would be on set if you show up with a box with wool with different colors, and you say, I love this color combination, do you like this one? And everybody can touch it. I think it's going to give a really interesting, sensitive idea to what lighting can be as well. So I think it's an amazing idea to give some kind of physicalness to it. Anyway, if you drive from Amsterdam all the way out to the Kröller-Müller Museum, that's a 2-hour train ride. You can get to the museum in the middle of a beautiful national park. You get to this amazing museum that you can look out into nature, and you've got these amazing pictures. And there it was where I discovered these paintings from Van Gogh. So there was this full row of just looking at portraits and how to light them and how to use them and how we could learn light from there. So let's jump into there. For one, when we talk about portraits, and Van Gogh was trying to figure it out, isn't it an amazing thing that he left out the face? That he said, I'm not there yet. I'm not going to look at the face yet. What I'm interested now is his pose. I just want to see how the person stands at the ocean. I'll paint that, but I won't worry about the face because that's not so important for me. And I think that really leads to something interesting for us to understand, where do we want to look? What's important in this storyline, in this frame, what we're trying to talk about? So what does that mean? We don't have to light everything, maybe. We only have to light certain areas because that's where our core attention needs to go. And I think we get, brushed away by beautiful, a little bit of shadow here and something playful here. But we can get lost in this playfulness of doing everything and we lose the focus. And I think what I'm trying to say in this Insta Live today is the most important thing to be successful at what you do is to maintain focus. You set out with a goal, and then like a tornado, you plow right through there, obviously without hurting people, but using them, working together with them to pull them with you to create the vision you want to create. And if there's something you don't think is important for the story, leave it out. And you're going to see the same thing in your tool list. Don't carry more gear than you need. It's just going to be in your way to get to the tools that you need to get to do it fast, to spend more time with those tools you know you're going to need to achieve something. So I think that's a really crucial part we can learn from this image here is focus on what's important to you. And what's not in focus to you, radically leave it out. Why is it important to leave out things? And I think that's a major important thing we have to dip into here right now is what happens if you leave information out? Just look at the face, for example. We leave out information in the face. Our mind automatically puts in the information because it happens to us every day. Things move so fast. Film, 25 seconds, 25 frames per second, right? Those are 25 individual frames. Our brain can't deal with it, so it kind of glides it together. And the same thing happens on an emotional level. If we see two things, we kind of connect it. Like we see a dark alley, we see a person moving towards us, our brain goes crazy. But isn't that cool? Because it's each individual's audience craziness that they're seeing when they're looking at your image. So there's no bigger emotional impact than leaving the maximum amount of information to the audience. Because the more you can leave to the audience, the more their brain's going to start working on it, the less work you have to do. Because he says, I'm stepping back, I'm giving you this, your brain should do the rest. Boom, maximal emotional impact you're going to have from that. So the more you focus, the more you reduce, the more you leave those gaps in between information. So if you look at old movies, somebody's walking in the door, they close the door, they sit down. These days, somebody comes to a house, they sit down on the couch. You don't need this information in between because your brain's bridging it. And that's exactly the important thing. This bridging of it tells a story in your mind, everybody for themselves doing it. So that's the reason it's so important to leave away information to let the audience fill it in. I hope I made my point. Let's move on. So another one. Van Gogh said here, I'm still not interested in faces. I'm interested in it. How does it look like if a woman stands at nighttime at the shore? Let's look at that. Who needs a face? If I have a face, I'm going to tell a whole different story. How is she feeling? What is she doing? By leaving it out, it's letting you decide what it is. And if you compare those two pictures, isn't it cool? Daytime, nighttime. Isn't that an incredible amount of focus you see right here? It goes directly from day to night. I don't need a face. It's not important. I want to show a person standing there, standing at the ocean, at day, at night. That's my focus. That's what in the story I'm going to tell. And suddenly you're hanging in a big museum. And in our case, hopefully you're going to win a lot of prizes and get a lot of different jobs because people look at your work, the way you light and say, oh my God, I felt so amazing seeing this. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve all the time, right? So let's move on to faces. So here already we can see that Van Gogh then said, I'll leave away the body. I need to learn more about faces. And that's exactly what he did here. So if you see the face towards the black wall, and we have the light from the side, the mood is grading. We have obviously an intention of the face that it's kind of flat lit. It's not like the background gets any light, so the person and the face really stands out, which is beautiful. But that's here where we're going to go in and see how he used those different images time by time to learn different things. And again, just to point it out, this was in the beginning of his career. He was painting 2-3 paintings a day, or how many he was doing. At average, every 36 hours he was doing a masterpiece, because he had to learn in real fast steps. So here we go again. Another one, a little bit more from the side. The light's not coming from the side. We have shadow on the dark side. See, we have shadow here on the dark side. We don't see it. Obviously, if the camera would be on the side, or Van Gogh looking and painting it, we would see nothing. But here, we already see a little bit of tip, something happening on the cheek. And again, it's about what do we leave away? What information do we not share so we can fill it in? And of course, here we're also telling a story about there must be a light source close. There's something close to the face. He's possibly sitting at a table, and there's still in a dark room, so we know it's night just by leaving away the surrounding. But again, it's about the impact, about creating. How do I just shift it? I'll just move the camera over a little bit. I'll change the light a little bit, and suddenly the shift is here again. We go from something here to something to here, and it's totally different, because now it's like, ooh, there's a second side of the face. What's happening here? We can't see what's going on. Is she sad? Is she happy? Is she just waiting? We don't know. Our brain goes crazy again. It's exactly what we want to achieve here, because we want the audience to have the information they want to have. And now the camera moves more to the front, so I'm always in my film mode here, of course. It was him painting from a different perspective. But again, see how he's moving the light around, and now all of a sudden both eyes already having eye light. You already see the second side of the face, and look how interesting. Suddenly the wall in the back isn't black anymore. Where it goes into black, he kind of puts a little bit of light over here, too, in the back, to kind of separate it. Here you see it. So again, it's about how much do you want to show and how much information are we giving away. So by putting a little bit of light on the background, suddenly you get a little bit of perspective of the room. If you just compare this with the images before, you have no clue where that person is. You have no clue what this person is. They might all be sitting at a table, but we don't know, because it's all about how we can look at the face. And when we look at, that's just our human condition, the way we look at things. When we try to figure out who is this person, what is this person doing, we first look at the eyes. So we can do this with circadian tracing. When we do laser tracing of eyes, they did big psychology tests in the 60s. They started them to understand how we do look at things. So if we look at the face, first at the eyes. We understand what the eyes are doing. Okay, we feel comfortable. Now we look a little bit around the face to understand the rest. So the less information we give for the eye, for our human soul to understand what are we looking at, the more chance we actually, again, get the feeling of how we're perceiving this. Here we don't know how this person's doing. Our mind goes more crazy. Here the person's looking directly at us, and we see, okay, I understand what's going on, and all of a sudden we're interested in the background. So it's again, where's our focus? Our focus now is left a little bit from just the face, adding a little bit of room to this, a little bit of depth to that. So again, it's storytelling. It's about what are we telling and what are we not telling? How much do we want our audience to fill these gaps here? And here even more light in the face. Again, a little bit dark on his back, but again, now she has this white hat on, so it kind of separates the face differently. Isn't it amazing how precise he was looking at different ways to look at faces, in different ways to figure out the different moods and what we're feeling when we're looking at it, because it's still from the side. It's a little bit different expression. The light's a little bit more flat. Here you can see the light still. We have some shadows over here, and here the shadows are gone. I mean, there's a reason this guy's a genius, and there's a reason why we can learn so much from them. So that's the reason I'm so excited to being able to find this out. Okay, so next step. So we looked at faces. We learned everything we needed to do from basically the light walking around. So now he starts to say, well, what about if it's not so much that we have to put so much light in the face? What about if we put more light on the background than onto the face? What's going to happen? And again, we're talking about this gap, right? It's like in a comic. You got like two comic frames. It's called the gutter in between, the black. So that's where actually the motion happens. Not because we're seeing two frames, it's the information that's missing. And here we're having this same discussion again. We're having a discussion about how much light is on the face and how much light is on the background. So here again, we see the face, but not in total. It's not the same brightness as we see the background. Really important, especially when you do black and white work. Everything goes to gray, right? So we can have a red and a blue, and in black and white, it's both the same gray tone. So sometimes you have the feeling you're missing in contrast. If you're shooting in color, it's great just to sometimes tune it to black and white to see, am I maybe off just in my contrast and lighting, lighting intensities from that. point. So he's doing the same thing here. By adding more color to the background, the face pushes back. And so we again have to imagine a little bit what's going on, because again, what our mind is doing at the end of the day, it's all about how the audience perceives stuff. So we have to know a lot about this. Is about, we always first look at the brightest part, and then we look at the most sharpest point. So again, what is sharpness? We know it from Photoshop, 2 pixels next to each other. If we change the contrast from these 2 pixels, the image is going to appear sharper. So again, here this actually looks really crisp because we got a white background, a bright background to a darker face. So again, it's immediately, we're first looking at the background, whoops, that's white. And then we're going to the nose, for example, because that's where the contrast goes. And then we start to look at the face and figure out what's going on with this person here. So again, we're telling a story right here. He takes that much further. So here he goes to the next step of saying, well, what if I go really vibrant in colors? What if I really let the face go dark, underexposed? I still see it's a face. I still see the nose. I still see a little bit of the cheekbones here, but it's really going back. And I must say now the camera is not doing such a good job. It's not as green. It's a more dulled kind of colors he's using here, but you'll see it if you follow the link in the bio. You go directly to the Google Slides. But just, it's still the same story. What if we do a negative fill? What if we take the light off the person? We just say, let's keep the background what it is. Let the person feel into the scene. What is the person feeling? Just walking into a dark hallway. Is something happening? Is the person sad? We're opening so much space for emotion. That's the reason, years after years, thousands of people go to see Van Gogh's paintings because it gives them a chance to feel. And I think that's the most amazing thing about art, because it gives us the chance to feel something. We go home, we had a boring day at work, we watch a movie, and all of a sudden we got the chance in a safe environment to feel all these emotions. And that's the most amazing thing about it. And for us in art craft and lighting, it comes rightly down to that. How can we reduce it? How can we go back, to fundamental research? That's what we do at the Lightbridge. It's about saying, how can we take everything away that we don't need, take all the stuff away, and we ended up after 15 years of research just with these reflectors, and they suddenly can do so much more because it's been so reduced. And the same thing happens here when you look at Van Gogh. How much can he reduce to get where he needs to go? So here we go to the next level. I'll go back one more. So we had this really interesting dark background, bright face. We go to darker face, bright background, and then we go into really bright background, dark face. Such different, vast emotion. Just think about it. That's just a floppy, moving it in and moving it out a little bit, dimming a light down, dimming it up a little bit. Such little changes, massive impact. Let's go to the next stage. So here we see a face where we're not going away from the soft light of saying how much does it wrap around or not, but using more a precise hard light to highlight certain characteristics of a face. And again, we have a feeling there's something outside of frame, and I think that's a lot of part about what we do in lighting, what we underestimate actually a lot, is to say what's happening outside of frame. The light setup that we have is reflecting in the eyes, is reflecting into the scene. So here when we look at it, we're automatically saying, well, there must be a window. Because it doesn't feel anymore so much like a night light. And the room maybe is a little bit too bright. We already see a little bit of the background there. Vincent van Gogh, these are the really early paintings you're looking at. After the end of the show, it's being recorded. You can go back to Instagram Live to rewatch it from the beginning, if I hope I entertain you enough. So here we go. Here we have the face coming in. And just to mention, once again, for the people joining now, we're looking at the early works of Vincent van Gogh. We're looking into the paintings that actually shaped him to understand how to use light. And that's exactly where we can learn from the masters back in the days. So here we go, a little bit of hard light coming in, and it gives you a feeling of, how it's coming down the rim. We really understand the facial structure. He's giving us enough on the cheekbone to see the eye. He's giving us some eye light. So it's really easy for us to read this face because we're giving enough information. Just lighting a face flat from the front is not giving us information. Just to repeat it, if we read a face, the information we need is eyes, nose, mouth, around the face. And that's exactly what's happening here. We look at the eyes, we see around the face, and then we look in the middle a little bit and we understand the person. That's what we need to do. So we're guiding the person by light how to see. Again, the harsh light with a bright background. Totally different feeling again. Look at this. We just raise the ambience of the room, right? Much sunnier, much brighter, could even be outside. He's standing, his face is facing maybe a tree, or he's sitting inside, the light's coming. We don't know, but it's giving us such a strong impression because why? We can't see the face. We don't know what he's feeling. We could say he's sad, he's waiting, he's hungry. There's been amazing tests done by really early days of cinematography, of filmmaking, by a Russian filmmaker who just always took the same expression from a face and then edited different things after it, like face, stoic, a baby, face stoic, a grave, face stoic, some food, and every time you look at it, you think, wow, the person's hungry, the person's sad, there's a grave, the person's happy to see a baby. So the same thing happens to us here. We can look at this and we leave enough space for the audience to decide what they want to see. And such a beautiful feeling of saying, I can make a bright scene, but I don't have to show the face if I don't want to. I mean, just watch this great show, The Making of the Godfather, and of course Gordon Willis was big on leaving Brando's eyes not to be seen. It created such a bigger impact for us, right? So something similar maybe is happening here. And then we go into the next phase. Now we're starting to light the face again, and we're actually putting it to some background too. And you see how the mood picks up automatically, and we're still high contrast. We're not highly lit. So just saying, oh, if we want a bright mood, then we make it bright. It's not true. It's all about color differences. It's about how much we can see from the face. We feel comfortable even if we don't see the second part of the face because we see the eyes. We look there. We see it automatically, and we understand, wow, that's working really well for us, right? So he really went a long way from images like this to this to this. And it's always about figuring out how can I create a feeling, but at the same time I need to explain, for example, a time of day, what we often have to do. It has to be day, it has to be night, it has to be exterior, it has to be interior, and at the same time we still have to shape the face and the mood. Just because it's daylight doesn't mean it has to be bright. Just because it's daylight doesn't mean we don't have contrast. And just because it's night or maybe a really moody scene doesn't mean we can't see everything. So I think those are the most difficult things we can do, like lighting nighttime exteriors in a forest. It should be night and there's no moon. How do we create this feeling of night and we still can see something? The answers are never in saying, let's say, oh, there's just a strong moonlight, or let's just put up some light and make it look pretty. So that's not going to create the biggest, most impactful emotions that we can do. The most biggest impactful emotions will always come from focus. What do I want to tell? How can I tell it? And how can I use what I need to do by understanding how will people perceive it, then to use it. And I think here's always the balance we have to kind of figure out. Okay, I'll go back again, just because it's fun. Here we go again, daytime, bright light, on the background, not on the face, creating this. Here, the bright light's on the face, but we're still moody, but we're still with the powerful background. It must be day, I guess. So here we go again into some night scenes, a person and the arm. And here again, it's about what can we leave away? What's the story? So he now came to the point where Van Gogh said, I feel comfortable painting faces now. I feel comfortable lighting faces. I learned it. I knew how I would create the contrast. If you look at his face here, very similar to this idea, right? Or to this idea. So it's a variation of this. And all of a sudden he's taking it and putting it onto a body. So all of a sudden, you look at his physical movement, how he's really plowing the shovel to go into there, right? To create something. And he learned in the back, I can not only have to light the person, I also can light the background. And maybe even by lighting the background and not lighting the feet, I can actually create a stronger feeling of the force, the physical force it takes to use a shovel, for example. We don't know exactly what it is. But that's just because the background's lit. A little bit of rim light on the pants, and then some light on the face because we need to see it in his hands. His massive working hands are here too. So again, it's about focus. What do we need to show to explain the story we're trying to show? And how precisely he was practicing this to make this happen. Same thing again, he first did a face, now he feels comfortable with the face, he moves back and did a toe. And remember, I'm sure, how close the face was. We saw it with the man here, right here, or we saw it with the woman here. It was like, oh, dark, bright background. Maybe I can use this here, I'll give the face a little bit more. I actually can start adding a shadow on the wall, and I can have the person, actually the shadow on the wall. Sometimes I have the feeling looking at this, the shadow on the wall is telling a bigger story than looking at the person. Why? Because there's the contrast there. We first look at the brightest, then we look for the contrast. The contrast the biggest, from the brightest to the darkest element. That's what contrast is, right? When we're like on Photoshop, when you're trying to get more contrast. So that's, boom, that's exactly where we look. We first look over here. And then we look at the person, and then we look at the shadows of two people. No, it's only one, but it's a shadow of the person. It creates such a strong feeling by adding something into that. But again, it needed this precise exercise, as I showed you before in his timeline, how I actually, at this early age of 27, figured out how he was going to do it to get where he needs to go. And I think when we go into, for example, doing lighting tests for films, we can do the same thing. Do precise exercises to figure out what do I want to see from the actor, what don't I want to see, what works on the actor, if I don't show it, if I show it, always keeping the focus on what do I need to show to tell the story the best way. And again, Godfather, I think, is an amazing example of this, and of course, many, many other too. Next one, sitting at the table, right? We need some light on the face. It has to be a more brighter atmosphere. Still, we want to have a feeling of contemplation. So maybe there's a dark background. We can leave it contrasty. But again, by having the dark background, by having the bright background and the dark back of the person's body, we create the contrast so we have a more impactful feeling of the physicalness of the person. Because I think that's a lot of times underestimated too, that the actor doesn't only act with the face. It's always something, it's my close-up now. And of course, that's what it's about then. But the physicalness of a body and how it moves, how we can help with light to get that physicalness of the body out better. We can learn a lot from Van Gogh to saying, well, maybe if I want to show this person has a limp or the way the actor's moving, it's not the best way just to light the actor. Maybe I just light more of the background and let the actor be more in the dark to show that better. Because again, what's the focus? The focus is to show the physicalness of the actor or the person he's trying to portray or she's trying to portray, to show in that way, right? So that's, I think, a great one to see here. But again, I'm actually getting to something here. He was trying to figure out how to paint people around the table and how to create that interesting. I mean, don't we do that a lot? We have to light a lot of people sitting around the table. Not that easy to keep everybody interesting. So here again, he was playing with, well, what if that one person has a window in the background? I don't want to see the face. I want to see the table. I want to see the person's eating, but it's a dark mood. I'll just put him silhouette against the window, just a little bit of light in the face to create that feeling. And such a big difference, huh? Look at this. There's enough light in the background. We can see the face. And then we have this juxtaposed to it. Could be the same time of day, you know. It's not that much difference, just that the walls are a little bit darker, but again, there's a window, so naturally there would be more contrast there. That's just such an interesting way to do it. And then if you look at the final result, a very famous image from Van Gogh, the potato eaters, look, all of a sudden, all the people are sitting around the room. So he did very precise exercise to see how can I paint people sitting around a table? What am I interested in? What is the story I'm trying to tell? Boom, here's the masterpiece. That's exactly what we have to do too. If we have a scene, if we have a film that plays a lot around the table, we've got to figure out how to light it, how everybody looks the way they should look. But again, we're trying to create something, right? So do these little exercises to figure out what it is. When do you think intention in the light technique is leading to too much story? Too much to the story. Sorry, I'm trying to understand a sentence. When do you think intention in the light technique is leading to too much story we are telling? What do you think intention in the light? Okay, so we got intent. It's a great question, but I'm sorry, I don't really understand it totally yet. When do you think intention in the light technique is leading to too much story we are telling? Would you mind being more precise? I'm not sure what you mean with, I know you're typing like this, so it happens to me all the time too. So the light technique that we're using, if it's leading to too much in the story we're telling. So if I understand correctly, what we're trying to say is you're setting up all these lights and is it actually doing too much for the story we're trying to tell? I think if that's what you're trying to say, that's exactly what's happening to us all the time. Because we go ahead and say, this is the way things have to be lit. We have a lot of people sitting around the table, we do a big softbox. No, don't worry about it. I'll answer what I think the question is. I hope that's okay. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. I think that's the best part about Instagram Live. So what we do is, like, we have this room and we have the light coming from the top. It's a softbox. Is light leading to the narrative? Too leading to the narrative? Okay, I'll answer that too. That's a even more complex and interesting thought. I got a story for that. But I'll first say the first part, what I was thinking. So let's say we have the scene, and we would say we have a lot of people. Jakob, we're lighting a scene. A lot of people are sitting around the room. We got some women that are not that young anymore. We got to take care, and we got to do this. So my first intention is going to be, well, the way we always do it. We put a big softbox above the table, and then we use some hard lights. We push them onto the table so it looks like actually there's a chandelier hanging above. Then we maybe add some highlights from the back. It's going to be fine. You can shoot 360. It's all good, right? So that's where the technique is leading above the story, because I was never asking, what's the mood? Why are they sitting around the table? What's the story we're trying to tell here? Are they rich people? Are they poor people? What's going on? So a lot of times, and I think that happens a lot, the way we learn how to light, because we look at the setups, and then we try to replicate because we like the result, and we're not staying, the quote I gave before from Albert Einstein, we're not staying with the problem long enough. We're trying to go to the solution too fast. So that's exactly what's going on here. I'm offering a solution because I'm a gaffer and I want to do it fast for you, of course, because you need fast solutions, but I'm not giving us enough time to think about, or not giving you maybe the space to tell me as a DP, what's the feeling behind it? What are we trying actually to do here? We can communicate through technical tools, or we can communicate, through emotions, doesn't matter. But I think that's the main point about it, that we have to stay longer with the question, what are we trying to show and do? And then let's set up the light. Maybe the softbox is the right idea. It doesn't matter. Maybe the softbox at 50% or doing different lights inside, not to make it too evenly lit, will be the solution. But let's stick with the problem as long as we can to really figure out what we're trying to do and then go on. So that was my first interpretation of the question. The second one, I think, is a really interesting one, is if we say, well, the narrative is it's a dark and gloomy scene, let's do dark and gloomy light. Simple, and then it's done. What about if we go against it? What if we say, well, if it's such a gloomy and everybody's crying and it's a horrible situation, why don't we do some beautiful sunlight coming in? And why don't we juxtapose it, right? So I thought that was an amazing intellectual thought I had for a movie some years ago. And I offered it, and everybody thought, oh, of course, that's amazing. Let's go against it. So I lit this. It was a war movie, and basically it was about a kid coming to their grandparents, and they were locked up in Vienna, and it was just horrible, and they didn't allow themselves to go out anymore, and the kid basically frees them, so tells them that the war's over. You don't have to hide in here anymore. And so we lit it with these beautiful rays of sunlight coming in, through the nailed-up windows and everything. And what happened was the actors came in, and they started to act out the scene, and then they were saying like, something doesn't feel right, the scene doesn't feel right, it's the mood, I'm not there, the text is wrong, and they couldn't pinpoint it. And then I was sitting, it was a small movie next to the director, looking in the same viewfinder, and the director was fighting, trying to cut out lines, doing it differently, and like 20-30 minutes in, the director looked at me and said, well, Jakob, what's wrong? And just instinctively, I would never offer that otherwise, I said, I think the lighting's wrong. I think we can't go against it. We need to offer lighting that gives the actors the emotion that helps them get into the scene. Said, oh my God, you're right. And she broke for lunch, and we relit during lunchtime. We figured it out somehow. Then we relit it to the dark and moody scene, and suddenly it worked. So I think there's this intellectual way of saying, how can we go against it? But at the same time, it's not only about us and how we're using the light to tell our story. We may never forget that we've got humans sitting in that light, and how do they feel? So we have to, yeah, exactly. So we have to kind of figure out sometimes a middle way on how to do it. I mean, there's great examples, again, going back to The Godfather, or actually it was Storaro, can't remember the war movie it was, with Marlon Brando too, where he was trying to explain this. There was a scene where Marlon Brando had to explain the horror of the wars, and he always went out of the light and he came back in. So Storaro gave him the chance to leave the light and come back in. And suddenly Brando had the chance to act it, because he had no idea how should he show the horrors of war. But leaving the light and being the dark and talking gave him the chance to actually let, again, the audience feel what they want to feel, and give the actor a chance to play in the scene. So I think it's a diligent way, and I think that's the reason it's so important for cinematographers to be so in tune with the actors, to know what is the story we're trying to tell, what are the humans doing inside the light, and how can we still achieve something, because at the end of the day, people will be only seeing this, right? So at the end of the day, we have to really make sure that what we're trying to I'll say it differently. We're shooting the scene, even if humans in it, but at the end of the day, it's not about the humans in the scene, it's about the humans watching it. And that's what we're actually doing it for. So we've got a certain, I think, responsibility to not only look out that the scene is perfect on set, but actually to always think, what should the people feel that they're going to be seeing? And I think that's where the key point is to this. Okay, I talked a long time about this. I'll move on to Van Gogh. So, like, here was a scene where I was trying to say, well, I have to show about a person like weaving, and there's light coming into the window. So it is actually much darker than Instagram is showing it right now. No, I can't do it here. Please go back to the slides. You'll see he's actually trying to show it's a dark room, horrible working conditions, and I still need to light it. So that's something we face all the time, right? So here again is something that comes back to the point about saying how much light do we need to give the feeling of enough light that we can see it, we understand the scene, but it still feels dark. And I think he did it beautifully by saying, I'll just do a window and I'll then have some white linens that the light's reflecting off from to give some light into the room, but it can keep the mood down. And that's the way he solved it. But he wasn't done with that. He was looking at different ways on how to do it. And see here, for example, how beautiful the light's hitting the face and how it's bright up here, how it's dark down here. And the light's just beautiful reflection. We saw this in the close-ups, right? When light's just hitting the face on how to do it. And that's the way Van Gogh lit. So I spend so much time talking about different stuff, which I think is great. So I'll do the second part of the presentation the next time, and we're going to do it on Hammershøi. If you give me enough feedback that talking about painters is of interest, then we can look at a painter that just looked at painting light. And I think that's important. But to sum this up, what we watched here in the last 40 minutes was a person having a very clear vision and a focus. What do I want to show? And I think the major part for everybody working now in the industry as creatives is saying, where do I look? What interests me? And it's our job as technicians, as a gaffer, to say, hey, where do you look? How can I help you? And that's what Lightbridge is here for too. It's about saying, how can we support you out there to create what you want to look? I don't want to try to sell you any kind of product to say, this is going to look awesome, this is the new look. No, it's up to you. You're the creatives. We're here to follow your vision, to create tools to make it possible so you can make it happen. So that's the reason for us it's so important to create really intuitive, easy to use tools. So it's all about the creativity, about creating moods and emotions, and not about the technical geeking out about stuff. And I think that's the most interesting part about it. Okay, that was my rant for today. Thanks so much. We'll come back to that. And if there's any questions that are bugging you right now that you're trying to ask me for the last month, I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. If anything comes up, happy to answer it. And thanks so much for the good feedback, and we'll get back to you. Yeah, anybody had a chance, I'll leave this here where it is now. A lot of questions about SnapBridge, about layered lighting still coming up. And it's again about the form of saying, right here, you know, a punch of light and how much fill can you do? And the SnapBridge basically can do both at the same time. So if there's any more questions about how to use the new products we're doing, happy to do an extra live about it too. So best is just to reach out and to let us know what we should talk about. Yeah, any questions? Thanks so much. Thanks for the feedback, because painters, it means a lot to me. Art means a lot to me. Supporting you guys out there means the world to me. So that's favorite time of month, spending with you here, meeting you in all the trade shows, in the workshop. So should you be in New York, actually I can say this, we're doing a workshop with Lux Lighting together. It's 2 days before Cine, and it's actually the day of Cine Gear on the outside venue, so you can definitely come and join us in. And then I'm going up to Toronto, doing a workshop there in March too, with the CSC, and then possibly one in Philadelphia. So if you're in that region, do reach out for us. We'll try to give you a spot there, because we're sold out sometimes very fast. Yeah, I was also amazed by Van Gogh, seeing those pictures. I've always had a different feeling with all the cornflowers and stuff, to really see where he came from. Yeah. Okay, no more questions. Then I thank you so much for joining. An honor and a pleasure as always. If you want to rewatch it, you can look at it on Instagram Live. We can go from there. Yeah, Caravaggio is amazing. There's actually a beautiful movie about him too. A beautiful painter too. Cool. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Here comes the question. Would you overexpose the scene so you get more detail and crush in post? I'm a gaffer. I have to stay away from too much post questions, I'm afraid. But I always felt like the more we can create things on set, the more everybody can feel it on set, and we can be more precise about the emotion than doing it afterwards. And it does look different. If you crush in afterwards in post and not do it on set, it's different. But again, everybody's looking at it. The director's looking at it on set. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're really on focus on the mood. Means less work afterwards, and I think we're going to be more precise where we want to go. So when you go into post afterwards, you can focus again on that precision that you're trying to do. But again, it's art, right? So there's no rules. And if you feel that's fits the best way for the scene from your tests, there's no stopping you, I hope, to create what you need to create. Okay, everybody, I'm going to jump out here. Let us know if there's anything we can support you guys with. Have great shooting days out there. Stay safe. Take care. See you next month. Bye-bye.